author's name. The book is called 7 Stories Every Salesperson Should Know, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And there are just stories for every occasion. So something like that is important to know what type of story to present in that case. But the key thing is, by that point in the relationship, you're kind of familiar with each other now. You're not like cold.
Mhm.
Like, it's not like a cold getting to know you thing so much.
Right.
So at this point now, you can try to talk more about the value they're going to get. And, if they're this close to closing the deal, then you really want to make them paint.
Oh, you got to be straight with people when you're a coach. You're not there to be everybody's friend. You got to tell the stuff that's hard
Yeah.
to hear
If
too.
I'm no good if I lie to you.
Yeah.
What good am I if I lie to you just to protect my lousy fee?
Right.
That's not what I'm in this for. I do this
Mhm.
to make a meaningful contribution to the world. Okay, I'm not going so far as say I'm saving the world, but I got to be helping, at least somewhat. I don't know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very much. It really is a coach. Really is kind of a best friend and the person who pushes you hardest when you need to be pushed.
All right. Excellent. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Define Your Purpose. And joining us today from Long Branch, New Jersey is transformational speaking coach and Wall Street Journal author, Michael Barris. Michael, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Hey, Carl, it's nice to be here, and it's a pleasure to be here with your audience.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm very interested always in how people get started and what captivates them into what they're doing. So I'd like to ask you the same sort of thing. Where your interests started when you were younger.
Well, I guess you could say it all started with a ukulele.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, when I was like 6, I received a ukulele as a gift, and I strummed at all kinds of little things that a lot of kids strummed on, even little Beatles songs and things like that. Because that's the era I was in.
Oh yeah.
And my family, we used to sing in the car, and
Right.
we'd sing songs. And when I was in day camp, I was like kind of the resident ukulele star, if you will. Like I'd stand in a circle and everybody would be singing and stuff. So that really taught me the power of holding audiences.
Mm.
And that's been something that's fueled my interest in helping people to become more powerful communicators. Because
Mm.
look, some of the world's most powerful people are the ones who know how to speak well and know how to, they may not even be beautiful masters of language, but they know how to marshal their feelings and their ideas in such a way that it pulls people up and makes them take notice. And of course, when you can do that, you can get a lot of success in life, right? Some of the most powerful people, as I say, are the ones that are
Mhm.
great, powerful communicators. And if you look at the most influential people in the world, whether they're in government or science or whatever, they generally all have the ability to talk about their ideas and to engage the listener. And so
Mhm.
that's why I do what I do, because I believe
Mm.
everybody has the power to technically connect with others and to really create a relationship that can be positive from both sides. Both you're providing information that's helpful, and also you are using it to some degree to further your own goals, whether it's in business or politics or just pulling people together. And that's why I do what I do.
Right. Right. Awesome. Awesome. So how did you I guess did you start as a writer first out of school?
I always did love writing, and that really has been my aim. I still am a writer. I worked as a journalist. As you mentioned, I was worked for Dow Jones Newswires and the Wall Street Journal. I had numerous jobs. This was right during the height of the financial meltdown, the economic crisis that we had around 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
And I was on a desk that turned around some of the biggest breaking news stories, and we had to do it in less than 20 minutes. And it would be redistributed to readers of the WSJ.com, the Wall Street Journal's website, and Dow Jones' various global newswires. And the key thing about that is that you had to really learn just how to boil things right down to the essence. And I think that was a key thing, because in any kind of speaking or communication, you have to kind of get down to the nitty gritty. Of course, you can't just start out like that in a talk. Like, I hope we'll talk a little bit more about this later. You got to kind of warm up the audience. But a key thing is not wasting their time. You want to know how to deliver things succinctly, and as I say, achieve your strategic goals. In this case, it was to tell the readers, who are often professional investors, what the most important thing was that they needed to know about the news event.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And so you branched out then into speaking from working on all that.
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, I had long been. I also should mention I'd been an entertainer for a long time. I'm a guitarist who does vintage jazz and blues music from the 1920s. So I learned a lot about working audiences from that, because, as I mentioned, before we got on the air here, if you don't know how to please the audience, you're not going to get a call back from the club owner. And if you have any desire to have a career as a musician, that can be fatal. So I always was interested in learning more about the art of moving audiences. And I was in a speaking club for a long time. And gradually I started building up my ideas, and I wanted to make it into a book. So when I created the book, the goal was to just create a simple guide that people could use to find out how to speak with greater impact. And that's what I created. It's called How to Become a Super Speaker, the 7 Principles for Speaking with Confidence and Connecting with Audiences. And from that, I started speaking. I started speaking about the ideas in my book. And then people would also ask me to coach them. And that's how the coaching began. And now I'm working on a sequel to the book now, which ties in with the speaking goals. It's storytelling, because it's long been known that stories are a very powerful tool to use in order to reach audiences.
Yeah, for sure.
Not enough has ever been done about the performance side of telling a story. You'll find a lot about what to say, what's the right thing to say in certain situations, but not enough about how to keep people interested in listening and how not to lose their attention, even in a short little piece. Now, if you and I are having a little chat, and we were sort of sharing stories with each other, chances are the performance aspect may tend to fade into the background, because if we form the relationship, you're kind of giving me a lot of leeway in how I'm telling it to you. You're kind of more hooked into the person. You've gotten to know me a little bit, right? But if you're on a stage or in any sort of a major presentation situation where you are speaking to people, you have to be able to put a story forward in such a way that it hooks the crowd, makes them want to keep hearing more, and leaves them, maybe has a little twist, so that there's a moment, a revelation, a moment of clarity, and it leaves them with a message. It's what you call the hero's journey, but it's very, very important to keep that little twist in there, that where things seem to be going one way, but then they go another way, because that makes people go, "Oh, didn't expect that."
Right.
And by the way, and that's a key reason why stories work so well with human beings. It's because our brains find the story format different, unfamiliar, and as a result, it works differently to try to process the elements of a story, say, than just the elements of something you throw at me with just plain old facts and figures. And that's why stories resonate, and it's also why we tend to remember stories longer than we do things that are just put forward in a plain old facts and figures myth way.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to our survival too. That was for a long time our only means of avoiding danger and finding food and relating to each other. Those things.
Yeah, it's like it's an ancient form. It's still with us. So is speaking. I always say that there's a reason why speaking is still with us, and that's because, look, in business, major deals are usually closed by at least one or more people, two or more people talking to each other, usually
Mhm.
face to face.
Right.
And, it's because we recognize that there's nothing creates relationships and rapport like actual communication through speaking, even if it is through
Mhm.
computer mediated communication like this or whatever. But storytelling also is an ancient form. And the more you know how to leverage it, the more benefit you get from it, and the greater chances you have of achieving success.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I've found that to be true in my own experience as well.
Oh,
It's a better way to communicate. And I think that people end up drawing more conclusions than they would otherwise if you just had a basic description.
because you get deeper.
Story. It's much more powerful.
You probe more deeply, and really, you see, the other important point about any kind of public speaking thing that you're doing is that you want to arouse an audience emotionally, uh, and as
Mhm.
quickly as possible, right?
Right.
Especially if you're doing something online, because people
Mhm.
invariably are, if they're scanning through their feeds on their phone or something, if they're watching by social media, you can lose them in seconds. So that's why it's
Yeah.
really important to try to get as proficient as getting an audience kind of revved up and interested to hear more as quickly as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think people put a lot into having kind of an elevator pitch for their business. What do you think about that, or what are your pointers on that?
Well, first of all, the term elevator pitch to me is a little dated, but I
Yeah.
prefer to say elevator speech. The reason why it's dated is because it goes back to the days. It's the idea of, and this might have been where it came from. I think it's the idea that like a scriptwriter has a script, he wants to get to the movie, the director of the studio, the producer of the studio, and he follows him as the guy gets onto the elevator. So now the
Oh
guy's
yeah.
trapped on the elevator, right? So for as long as he,
Mhm.
between floors 1 and 3, or 1 and 8, or maybe it was a tall building, maybe 1 and 28,
Right.
you have to get your pitch idea. And the guy say, well, okay, I'll give you a chance. Give me something now, but have it to me by 3 o'clock tomorrow. Like that kind of thing. So today, people have the whole notion of a pitch kind of really smells bad now in ways. Why?
Yeah.
Because, and it might have happened during the pandemic with so many people working remotely, that if you got steadily approached by people who want to sell you something, you get so that you can smell a pitch coming a mile away.
Mhm.
You can feel
Yeah.
them go. They're going to the wind up. There's the delivery, and
Mhm.
and invariably you're thinking you might give them time to say what they want. You might listen to them, or you might think, look, I don't want to deal with somebody who didn't even want to go to the trouble even trying to get to know me a little bit. If
Mhm.
you want to go to bed with me, at least buy me a cup of coffee first.
Right.
Metaphor, because that's kind of what it's like. Anybody
Mhm.
on LinkedIn, just to give you an example, has experienced this countless times. I'm sure of it. Yet people keep doing it. I guess they figure that it's a numbers game. And if you hit like 100 people with this same annoying pitch, maybe one or two will come in, or maybe more. I don't know. But that's so
Right.
anyway. So the idea of the elevator pitch, to me, that needs a little bit of updating. But the idea
Yeah.
of having to kind of explain what you do succinctly,
Mhm.
and efficiently, that's very important, because
Mhm.
you really can run into people anywhere. I know the idea is that, you mean if I run into somebody and I tell them a pitch in 20 seconds, it's gonna result in a sale? Not necessarily, no.
Right.
I mean, it could happen, but more likely it'll simply lead to a better call, where
Mhm.
you can actually sit down and have a chat, get to know each other a little bit, share some stories, and perhaps then it leads to a sale of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That makes sense. Um, so what would have been maybe some
Excuse me.
well, gesundheit. Um, just kind of wondered about your coaching work with people. Maybe what would have been some good takeaways that you've been able to provide about public speaking. Lots of times people ask the basic question about how to avoid being nervous and what to think about and things like that.
Well, the key to that is to have it all starts with the preparation. Now, a
Mm,
lot of people say you got to rehearse, and I certainly agree with that. But I would say you have to be strategic about how you rehearse. It's what you do. So, for
mm,
example, you know, I I believe it's okay. I always say, don't just stand there and try to recite something from memory, in full sentences, and certainly don't stand there and read something. The only time you do that is if like you're responding to something and you have to give a formal apology or an explanation, that kind of thing. But in most speaking, I encourage people to have keywords. Now, a lot of people may call that, well, that's just, a point form outline. Well, not quite. The difference is that you want to pick any kind of words or anything that resonates with you emotionally, because the more you can feel yourself responding to something so that you can't help holding the feelings back, the more you're going to get this. The more you're going to get the audience moving towards you and bonding with you, and kind of you'll have them in your camp.
Mm.
So that's why I suggest that
It's great.
it's okay to, you can write your speech out in longhand if you want. That's fine, or type it out, whatever you mean. But then go through it, and this is the only time now you're going to use this document, is to pull out 2 or 3 words or a phrase, anything that resonates with you. It could be one per section or one per sentence, whatever works for you. It's yours. And then you get like a list of these keywords, and then you practice delivering this talk spontaneously as possible to the keywords. Like I can stand in front of my mirror and do that, right? And then as I'm doing it, I feel what is working and what isn't. If I feel I'm having too much trouble, like speaking to this part or retrieving it feels a little difficult, do I really even need that? So I might even throw that part away, or I might substitute something else.
Mm.
So if you do enough of that, now you have what I call landmarks. So that if you lose your place when you're speaking, which is a major cause of anxiety,
Mm.
you can fall back on that. You kind of just freeze. You freeze the show, because this protects it. Because as long as you're doing nothing, essentially, just freeze. You're not harming it. And then backtrack in your mind, find one of those landmarks, the one you can find, and then go forward in your mind. And that's one way you can find your way back. You may
Mm.
not, you
Yeah.
may miss something when you come out, when you find a
Mhm.
new landmark, but that's okay. Just press on. Chances are the audience won't notice. They usually would not notice. And you definitely don't want to draw attention to it by saying something like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Or, gee, I think I may have skipped something. Never do that. You're
Right.
the performer. It's your stage. You own the stage. All the audience expects from you is a speech or a presentation. You give them one. You don't have to tell them about any flaws. If you do it well enough, you'll pull it off, right? It'll just make it smoothly enough. They'll just think it's part of the way you planned it for the most part. And
Mhm.
then regarding plain old anxiety, look, there's a lot been written about deep breathing and going for walks and doing whatever. And I recommend the idea, of, before I gave a talk, sometimes I'd go into like it was like in a meeting area, like a big meeting room. And I go into the bathroom and I close the cubicle door, and I get there and I'd hang my head over, and I would just sort of let my arms dangle and just give myself a forceful release of air, and then just hang there. And then when I come up, now you're a little bit lighter headed, but in a way where you don't feel anxiety. Okay.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's one way you can do it. Now, and then when you start talking. But the thing is, you just want to make it feel as organic as possible. You want to make the audience feel that the words are occurring to you almost spontaneously as you're saying them. So that's
Mm.
why, if you want to deal with anxiety, the preparation is so important. So we're at the point where you can just kind of do it make it seem off the cuff in a way. And of course,
Right.
there
Mm.
are often moments when you don't have the opportunity to spend a lot of time practicing, right? But the more you do it, the more you learn how to develop a method that works for you. So you get better at pulling things together quickly, and that also helps minimize anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great tips. Absolutely. Um, so, for someone who is really looking to sell their business, or the their I guess, what would be some pointers you might give for that sort of thing?
Well, it's very important to establish a relationship. So,
Mm.
I mean, I assume we're here. You mean in a discussion which has sort of progressed, where we're kind of near making some sort of a deal, that kind of thing? It's sort of later on in the deal. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Yeah, to a
Yeah,
business owner or something like that. Hmm.
I would say, there are stories for every occasion. I mean, there's a really good book. Oh darn, what is his name? I'm sorry, I can't think of the author's name. The book is called Seven Stories every salesperson should know, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And there are just stories for every occasion. So something like that is important to know what type of story to present in that case. But
Yeah.
the key thing is, by that point in the relationship, you're kind of familiar with each other now. You're not like cold.
Mhm.
Like, it's not like a cold getting to know you thing so much.
Right.
So at this point now, you can try to talk more about the value they're going to get. And,
Mm.
um, if they're this close to closing the deal, then you really want to make them paint the good stuff that they'll get from it, right? As we would say, sell the vacation. Don't tell them how great they're going to feel sitting in Hawaii on a beach with the sun. Don't tell them you're going to have to sit in an airport for 2 hours, or sit in the middle seat in an airplane. They don't
Right.
even give you food, right? Don't tell them that. Tell them that. But tell them,
Yeah.
getting back to the business idea, if you close this by Monday, you could be the owner of this business that's going to bring so much value into your enterprise. You're going to have, if it's an act of buying my business, you're going to have my XYZ unit, which will be bringing, at least $25 million of revenue into your coffers. Every year you're going to have this and this and this, and you keep on hammering home the value they're going to get out of it, right? Because remember, and you try
Yeah.
to keep it emotional,
Mhm.
because as you've probably heard it before, people buy an emotion, and they try to justify with logic after. So
Yeah.
anytime they keep trying to justify with logic, you keep trying to push it back to emotional. So keep trying to speak about things that will get them thinking, yeah, 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 yeah. I really want to do this deal. It's going to bring me so much value, and that's one thing I would say to that.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah. Great. Um, so if you were trying to get back to where you are now, and what would you do differently? What shortcuts would you maybe take, or
Sorry, what
what
do you mean
would
get back? What do you mean get back to what I?
if you were trying to be the same kind of coach you are now, and in the same speaker, trainer, author position, what would you do different, or what shortcuts would you maybe take to
Oh, I see. Would
to
I
where
go
you
back
are?
and change anything?
Yeah.
I The only thing I know, I believe, I love my basic 7 principles for speaking with confidence and connecting with audiences. It's a wonderful
Yeah.
little thing. I'm very proud I've created it, and I know a lot of people like it and they get value out of it.
Nice.
There's really nothing I could change, but I will tell you this: when I started out in this business, I hadn't done a whole lot of selling. The
Mm.
most selling I had done was selling light bulbs door to door to raise money for my high school band and orchestra trips.
Wow.
Right. And I get a guy coming to the door, he's in his undershirt, and he said, "Son, I'd like to help you, but I haven't worked in 6 months." Like that was a real horrible thing. I used to just get my family to buy the light bulbs.
Mm.
I hated it, right? And I'm sure anybody who's ever had to do that can identify with this. So then when I started this, it was a different kind of selling. I was selling something that meant a lot to me.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
selling, look, I wanted to make it a going concern, so it was necessary that I do actually have clients. I need clients in order to do my work, right?
Right. Hmm.
Um, it's not like I work to have clients, but I want to be able to do the work. So that's the reason you need clients. But what I learned is that I learned an awful lot about people, and in any situation, it's an amazing challenge trying to help people to see the value, right? Because I know it has value. They will find reasons to, as I say, you justify with logic. They'll try to find reasons to try to think, well, maybe this doesn't have the value I really want. Um,
Yeah.
but frankly, just speaking objectively, I've seen many people in that situation come do that, and then a year later, they're in exactly in the same position they were as they
Mm.
were. They're still spinning their wheels because
Hmm.
they didn't go with the incentive they had to jump into this thing, and you really have to let go. So, what would I change? It's just that I wish I'd known then about more about motivating people to help themselves see the value, and that's something I've had to
Mm.
know more about,
Right.
because a friend of mine gives the example that if I offered you a Maserati sports car, and I told you you could get that for $5,000, right? You'd find a way to get the money. I mean, assuming you wanted the car, which we assume, right? It's like a $200,000 car or something like that. So it's like that. That if you see the value, then then it makes my job of trying to get you to become my client a lot easier. That's something
Mm.
I had to learn how to do better. And a lot of
Mm.
that just comes from watching people and understanding people and getting to know what people are like when it's in that kind of situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are maybe some of the fears that you've helped people overcome with public speaking, or what have been some of the biggest wins there?
That's a good question because it's a bit of a cliche to suggest, well, everybody's afraid of public speaking. It isn't quite like that.
Mm.
In fact, there's research that shows that something like 80% of the population will get up there, or they'll give a speech, or they'll speak in the meeting, or whatever. It just may not be very pretty, and they may not
Right.
do the best job, and they may hate it. Okay,
Mm.
but they'll
Yeah.
get up there, they'll give it a try.
Hmm.
However, 10% are paralyzed with fear, the classic panic attacks and paralysis, can't get out of bed, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And then it's supposedly 10% absolutely have no fear at all. They love it. But I
Hmm.
have difficulty buying into that because as a performer, you need a certain amount of anxiety to be at your best. Otherwise, if you're too
Yeah.
relaxed, you could be a flop because you're really not working hard enough to try to engage them. You actually have to have a little bit of a fear of failure just to drive you to get out there. Now there are folks on LinkedIn who will probably crucify me for saying this because they think, oh, you're supposed to be positive and nice and say good for you. And that's not the way the world works.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, I believe in being positive when it's the right time. But
Mm.
unless you have a realistic understanding of the challenges you face in trying to get these people to like you and listen to you, you're not going to be successful.
Mhm.
So in terms of what are my biggest wins, it's a very common thing that people never seem to dig enough or soon enough into the human kind of the human element of what pulls us in, the human interest in an item, right? This is a journalistic thing. I
Mhm.
remember I would write articles and editor would say, well, you got the most interesting part down here. You should have brought that higher up. And that was a key
Mm.
point. And that's very common in speaking as well, because people aren't used to thinking in a way where you're trying to motivate people emotionally, right? We're kind of all in our own thing, or most people are. So
Mhm.
that's why you don't learn to think um, like a catalyst who excites people and makes them want to get up and to hear more and that kind of thing.
Mm.
So that's one big thing, is that helping people to learn to become more aware of the audience. So you look at them. I mean, this is assuming you're speaking in front of a live crowd. You look at them, you look at their faces, you just try to feel the emotion in the room. I'm not talking about like people smiling and tapping. It's just like when you're a musician, you don't necessarily go by the strength of the applause, right?
Mhm.
I could be playing in a restaurant and I'm getting people who are doing nothing. But if I see one person who's sort of tapping their foot, that means I'm reaching them. But sometimes they just sort of nod their head in time to the music. It's the same thing when you're giving a
Right.
speech, that people
Mm.
may look kind of stone faced and you may think, God, they must hate me. But in fact, they don't hate you. They're just listening. And you just have to
Mm.
learn to feel the energy in the room. And you can get there. It's when I work with the person I'm coaching, I pretend I'm the audience. I say, no, you need to crank it up here, or you're not giving me enough of a reason to buy into this. Why am I supposed to believe in this? If you don't believe in this, why should I believe in this?
Mm.
So that's how it pulls it out of you. It gets people to become like more tuned in, or they learn how to read the room. So that's a big win when I can get that done.
Right.
And of
Mm.
course, I've coached people who have spoken at conferences. One woman I coached, she's a perfumer for a New Jersey fragrance company, and she
Mm.
was giving a talk for the major industry major conference for her industry.
Okay.
It was called the World Perfumery Conference.
Mm.
So I was called in to help her get ready. So I did many things. I helped her craft it so it would have a grabby beginning. I gave input on the slides. I thought often the slides were too busy, too much. You never want the slides to be the star of the show. You want to be the star of the show.
Mm. Right.
And then I was also asked to help her. She's from India and young, and she had a fairly thick Indian accent. So I was asked to help her with that, so she could speak more clearly for the benefit of her audience in Florida, right?
Mm.
Hearing this.
Yeah. Mhm.
I worked with her very carefully, and I learned to help her pronounce certain consonants, because there's certain consonants that people in India particularly have difficulty with, certain words with D's and W's and T's and that kind of thing. And so,
Mhm.
I would just have to stop her and correct her. That was really what I call close coaching.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway, the point is
Oh,
that,
I'm impressed you can make that much of a difference in 1 or 2 sessions. That's great.
as a matter of fact, I will make a difference with you in probably in just one, but definitely two.
Awesome. Wow.
No, absolutely. That I'm proud of that, because I get close. I get close to the people I'm with,
Mhm.
and I'm proud of saying I go deep. I'm not a garden variety speaking coach. A lot of the stuff that most speaking coaches, I think I can say this, are preaching is stuff you get in Toastmasters.
Mhm.
Like, eye contact, very important. Volume, speed, hand gestures, all very
Mhm.
important. It's very important, but that's not going to help release the confidence of the person necessarily, right?
Mhm.
There are
Yeah.
people who may know that stuff, but once you get in front of a real crowd of strangers, then you get self-doubt issues.
Mhm.
And,
Yep.
and you make more progress when you work with me directly on your shoulder and in your ear, face to face, than you get like with a member run speaking club, where your feedback may only be as good as the person's knowledge you're getting it from. They may know less than you do. That,
Mhm.
because people would evaluate talks.
Mhm.
I don't mean to demean them, but I'm just saying this is the real world where
Mhm.
I am now. And confidence is a huge part of it. Speaking is an act of faith. If you don't believe you can get and hold the attention of an audience for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever, you won't be able to do it. You have to really
Mhm.
feel that what you have to say demands being heard, and that you are the person who is best equipped to deliver it. And that's how you
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
to feel when you get up there.
Yeah. That's great. And then you get in there and you change that belief right away in people, huh?
Yeah, I do. I do. And look, they have to have a certain. First of all, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah.
That's the
Absolutely.
dirty little secret of the coaching business.
Right.
That
Mhm.
people say, well, yeah, I'd like to be helped, but if they're not really willing to be honest, sometimes they can be immature. I had one woman
Mhm.
who I worked with, and it turned out she didn't really want to go in the places I was trying to get her to go.
Mhm.
Like she couldn't let go of petty anger at people and audiences and things. And I said, look, I have to be honest with you. I really don't think you're going to make progress here the way I think I'd want you to.
Mhm.
And so I gave her a refund, but I did it because
Yeah.
that's it. And yeah, yeah, it's just
So you
people
got to
are very
be
interesting.
you got to
People are
be
just
straight
so
with
interesting, right? Sorry,
people.
we're going to say, sorry.
Oh, you got to be straight with people when you're a coach. You're not there to be everybody's friend. You got to tell them the stuff that's hard to
Yeah,
hear
if
too.
I'm no good if I lie to you.
Yeah.
What good am I if I lie to you just to protect
Mhm.
my lousy fee?
Right.
That's not what I'm in this for. I do this
Mhm.
to make a meaningful contribution to the world. Okay, I'm not going so far as say I'm saving the world, but I got to be helping at least somewhat. I don't know,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's very much. It really is a coach. Really is kind of a best friend and the person who pushes you hardest when you need to be pushed. It's sort
Right.
of a double
Mhm.
role. So I hold your hand,
Mhm.
and I also give you the little healthy shove to get out there on the stage when you need it, because I think that's what people need.
Yeah. Yeah. It does take a little bit of that.
Yeah,
So you said your second book's on the way. You're not quite
I'm working on it.
okay. All right. Good.
It's going to focus on storytelling.
Okay. Mhm.
I think it's going to be a sequel. So it would be the How to Become a Super Speaker 2. I forget what it is. It's about connecting connecting through business storytelling, something like that.
Mhm.
That's what
Okay.
it is. The title's still a bit in progress, and it's going. I've already done a lot of work talking to people about in certain industries. Like I am doubling down a lot on the financial industry since I have my Wall Street Journal
Mm.
background. I feel
Okay.
I have insights to offer with people who would be in financial advising, corporate
Mhm.
finance, insurance, real estate, even healthcare, consulting. These are all places where you kind of have to know, you're dealing with things that are numbers, and you can get bogged down in the numbers and the technical stuff.
Mm.
But you have to learn how to communicate with human beings. And by the way, that's a major issue, is that when people go higher in up the career ladder, they get a larger universe of stakeholders. And more, like, if you made your bones talking tech with other techs, well, then it's a struggle for you now to suddenly be speaking to a larger group of people who may not be technical experts, who may not even be speaking, it may not even be, first native English speakers.
Yeah.
So you have to really understand that. Don't get bogged down in the process, because they don't necessarily care about the process. What they want to know is how the result or the impact of this technology helps them with their problem. And
Right.
and that's like one kind of thing. So that's one kind of thing the book is going to focus on. People in real estate, it's interesting that they're sort of nervy in a way. They have kind of nerve to talk to people, to pitch them, but they aren't necessarily always the best speakers. Like once they get into the speaking situation, it's like, okay, what do I do now? And you can talk too much.
Mhm.
That's a key problem. You don't want to talk too much and talk yourself out of the sale, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
I've
and
done that too.
yeah, and they have confidence issues too. I mean,
Mhm.
the thing I always think is interesting is that the best salespeople understand that public speaking is important. They get it,
Mhm.
because even if you're making any kind of a demonstration, a presentation, or trying to persuade somebody, that takes confidence. It takes the ability to articulate a presentation concisely and in a way that addresses the problem that the prospect has, if you will.
Right.
Those are public speaking skills. It's just that
Yeah.
we forget sometimes. We get so caught up in the technique of public speaking, you forget that the main reason people want to know how to speak better is so that they get the results with it, whether it's getting a promotion, making more
Yeah.
sales, starting a business, becoming a thought leader, all those things. And
Mhm.
or finding a collaborator, or even saying, meeting somebody on an elevator and saying what you do in between floors 2 and 28.
Right. Yeah. Sure. So, um, what do you have happening coming up this year? What do you have in store for your company and all?
Well, I'm working now I've started some new programs.
Oh,
uh,
neat.
this one is directed at storytelling and public speaking. Like up till now,
Mm.
I had a coaching program which was called 5 weeks to become a super speaker. I'm sorry, 5 weeks to become a world-class speaker.
Okay.
And that was aimed at video or online, or 5 weeks to becoming a world-class speaker on social media. That was largely during the pandemic,
Mm.
right?
Oh,
So
neat.
now in this new form, it's marrying storytelling and public speaking to close deals. It's aimed
Mm.
more at helping salespeople uh, marshal the power of storytelling to have more serious conversations that can lead to deeper discussions, and maybe where you propose a solution to a problem they're having, and then maybe it ends up in some sort of an offer. It's that process. But a big part of it, I should also point out, is like I also talk a lot about small talk, because
Mhm.
everybody thinks, well, small talk is just sort of saying hello, how are you, and it kind of is, but there's an art to it, and you want to be able to learn how to start conversations that will get people interested in hearing you, so that hopefully it leads to a story where you can at least tell a story. You can't just tell a story right out of
Mhm.
the box, right?
Right.
They won't be warmed up, but you want to be able to tell the story so it gets them um, involved enough that they will hopefully share a story back. Because
Mm.
when they share the story
Right.
back, now they're going to give you an idea of what they're struggling with, what their problems are,
Mm.
um, how your business can help them, and that's all. And again, that's all leading up to the bigger thing of perhaps eventually approaching the idea of helping them. But
Mm.
you've really got to make it clear that you're there to help them. You want to help them. So,
Right.
again, as I say on LinkedIn, people get it wrong by just simply saying, "Hey, you can four times your income by
Mm.
using this." You don't. It's That's not how I'm saying to do it. It's more like, what problem you had, and to say, well, I've been
Mhm.
searching for a way to do this and I can't figure it out. And you might say something like, well, have you tried doing da da da? Well, no, I haven't. Well, this is something I do. And let me tell you a story. A guy I worked with, and you just say a guy I worked with. You don't say I'm a coach. Will you work with me? You just say a guy I worked with. When I'm a coach,
Mm.
he did blah blah. He had this great effect, And maybe the person says, well, that's very interesting. Yeah, I had an experience like that. I said, oh yeah, tell me about it. So he tells you about it, and you get this rapport going. So the book is all, in a way, it's all about building rapport through storytelling to try to help you
Nice.
achieve those goals. And basically, it's very much aimed at closing deals, making sales, but also it helps you just to make an impact wherever storytelling is required.
Right. And then you have customers coming back just to hear you tell more stories, I guess, huh?
Well, yeah, certainly. People tell me, "Hey, I really love that story you did on such and such," and I say, "Thanks very much." Like that story meant a lot to me. And we form a relationship, and that's really nice. Like when you actually get friends sometimes out of this kind of stuff, even if they're not your clients, or even if they are your clients, then you're still friends later. That's one thing about it I really like a lot. This particular work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to get a hold of you, is your website generally the best place, or?
It's a good place to go. It's Michael Barris, MichaelBarris.com, michaelbarris.com.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
that there's lots of buttons you can hit for getting in touch with me on that.
Yeah.
And that also explains. See, another part of what I do is I give talks, and if you're interested in my speaking with a group or learning more about my philosophy, it's all laid out there in
Nice.
detail. Um, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So it's Michael Barris at LinkedIn, and connect with me. And I should also mention that you can get a copy of my book in a series of PDFs
Yeah.
with videos where
Oh,
I have
neat.
like instructional videos and I'm talking about it. And that's a complimentary thing.
Oh, very nice.
And to get that, you just got to go to michaelbarris.com//mini hyphen course. So it's like michaelbarris.com/MINI hyphen COURSE.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Great. Awesome. What a great resource.
Yeah, this be useful. It's concise.
So do you help people with writing too, with copywriting or proposals or things
I
like?
I do that, and I
Okay.
have done, and it is something I love to do. I've ghost written books for people.
Hmm.
Um, I ghost wrote a book for a professor who was working for a Chinese. It's actually an executive education company based in Beijing. But this was with the New York thing. So
Okay.
she had certain English issues,
Hmm.
and they found me, and I helped her write. It was about marketing. The whole thing was about using marketing to connect with people, and marketing and social media and that kind of thing. So
Oh, neat.
I wrote that one, and then when I worked with a professor, I went back to school at Rutgers to get a master's degree after I'd been at Dow Jones and Wall Street Journal.
Hmm.
And the professor pulled me out of the class, and he said, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to look for a job," because I actually became a full-time student when I went back to school. And he
Hmm.
said, "Well, would you be interested in doing a practicum with me?" I said, "Oh, that would be an honor," because this professor was a respected expert in his field. He'd written something like 15 books in communication. So we sat down to write a book about the Obama administration and its work in social media. It's called "The Social Media President." Um, Barack Obama and the politics of digital engagement. So it was about how
Hmm.
Obama's administration they sought to upgrade the with the internet, the social media infrastructure in the nation's capital. So they ensured
They
that
had a
every
lot of firsts there, didn't they?
what was that? Sorry.
They had a lot of firsts there in that administration with social
Well, you all
media.
in that, yes, like the government, the administration was working like with 20-year-old computers at the
Hmm.
time he got involved in there, and so they upgraded all that. That was a key thing he did. At least they fixed the infrastructure. They made sure that everybody had a website, and even their own website um, tried to, was open to taking input from the audience. We'd like to hear your ideas. Message us. And then later, Obama himself, if you may recall, so this is right between 2008 well, he was elected twice, right? So 2008 to 2012, and then 2012 2016, right? Um,
Mhm.
mostly in the first administration, anyway, they he threw it open. Like during the transition period, he said, we're looking for ideas for our government to work with. So send us the things you think you'd like us to focus on. So they got a whole raft of ideas, right?
Mhm.
This was like never done before um, on social media by a president.
Right.
Uh, and the thing is that, see, here's what the book found: that he got a zillion ideas, but what people wanted most was the legalization of marijuana.
Mm.
And they didn't really want the legalization of marijuana at that point.
Mm.
It's like Obama, if you ever look back on YouTube, you'll see Obama does something like he sort of makes a joke about it. He could be very folksy when he wanted to be. And he said, well, I guess, well, that shows you what the mentality is like on the internet. This is what people are thinking on what people are like on the internet.
Mm.
So in a way, we found that their use of social media wasn't really so social. It was really geared to just kind of get support for positions already taken a lot of the time. But
Right.
what he did do that now is abundantly clear is he paved the way for what Trump has been doing, or what Trump later did in terms of using Twitter and all that kind of stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
and I should mention, I think the Clinton administration was the first administration to start using social media. Anyway, this is a long way
Mm.
from public speaking, but that's something where I was. The whole subject was about ghostwriting, and the professor just said, "Well, here are my view graphs, like my slides. Craft a book around it." So I did. I essentially built out what was our major first draft of the book from using that, just simply from using view graphs, which was an interesting exercise. Um, so then I get back to your question. Yes, I do a lot of writing when I can because I like it, and
Nice.
I feel I'm an impactful writer. I write well, and I can help people with my writing.
That's great. That's important.
Yeah,
So, what's it like working with you one on one? As a client.
I like to be. Well, I've been praised for being compassionate but direct. I don't know why they need the but in there, or direct. No, direct but compassionate. Yeah, that's how.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Uh, in other words, you see, I love so much what I'm doing that if I think you sound bad, I'll say, look, this isn't going to work. Personally, I find what you're speaking, it's kind of monotonic. You're going to put people to sleep if you keep speaking like this. Um, your face is like you're kind of stone faced. You're really not giving me any reason to pay attention. Like why should I keep listening to this person? That's how you're making me feel. We really have to try to help you bring out your ability to generate more excitement. So I will say that. But
Mm.
then when you're great, when you're great, when you achieve the goals we're out
Mhm.
seeking, and we go through step by step, I'll say that if you were fantastic, that was great. I just believe that's the ideal way to work. Like letting you know what the
Yeah.
deal is, and then praising the hell out of you when you've earned it. Because
Yeah.
I ultimately do love my clients, even though I'm not sure the way I'm describing it makes it sound like that. But anyway, that is how I feel.
Right. So, what would have been maybe some of the cases that stick out in your mind of people that maybe that you've helped in the past? I mean, you've
Well,
been working at it for a while now.
yeah, sure. The one woman had a fear, kind of a morbid fear of going on video. Well,
Mm.
because she used to get very anxious, and she used to pick her face
Wow.
when she get anxious. So she actually had scarred up her face in ways,
Jeez.
and she felt very self conscious about that. So first of all, and as usually happens, I said, look, I got to be honest with you. You don't look bad. I gotta be honest. I don't see what you're worrying about. To be honest, you're beautiful. You actually was nice looking. I said you're attractive. You look good, and I meant it. I do mean it,
Mm.
and so that helped a great deal. But the more we got, so at least I got her working, and the more she got working, the more confident she felt. The less she started worrying about that facial thing, that visage thing,
Mm.
and ultimately, she became a good video. In fact, just in about two sessions, boom, she suddenly came right out of the box. I said,
Wow.
that was amazing. I said, where'd that come from? Like she must have had it in her, but she was holding it down. But I do get transformations like that, like
Wow.
that. So anyway, that's one case that really stands out in my mind. Excuse me. I've worked with one woman who's very, very literary. She has a great vocabulary. She speaks really well, and she was running her own business. She had like 9 people working for her on LinkedIn. I thought, wow, you're like an industry.
Mm.
So, but here's the thing, that although she used words well, she had difficulty focusing and getting down to her core message. You see, she'd been through a whole lot of upheaval in her life, and I think a lot of things were still floating around unresolved, you know. And so I in a sense, with her, I became more of an editor. Again, this is where the writing experience comes
Mm.
in handy, right? But
Okay.
I said to her, you have a good point, but I think the main point is down here, whatever. You should be talking more about that and less about this. I was essentially acting like a kind of an editor. So,
Mm.
and that's what she did. And once she got in the habit, see, once you started doing it, then you could see it. And from there, and suddenly we just simplified it. I said, look, just talk about how you help clients. Don't get fancy about anything like your
Mm.
divorce and this. And I know it's all emotional stuff. In this case, just talk about how you help the clients. And she did that. Boom. And she was great. And she's somebody who I've actually become a friend with since, because I just found she was very good to talk to. Generally, we had a very good rapport,
Nice.
which was really, really important.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I love I love the people that I meet coaching for sure.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's so interesting. I mean, and every time I get a new person, I think, wow, this is like a whole new person.
Hmm.
Sort of
Right.
delicious in a way, right? Like, wow, a whole new set of problems and challenges, and I kind of like it. I mean, in ways, I also love the confidentiality of it. That's another thing I love. Like, I close my door,
Hmm.
I'm here, and I have gone and worked with people personally too, but it's the same thing. I love the trust. That's
Right.
really what I like. I like the fact, okay, I'm here to help you, right?
Hmm.
But as I say, they have to want to be helped, and they have to let you be the coach.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll question what you do, and then you
Hmm.
have to explain. But if they really can't accept what you're doing, then it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But usually, I get results one way or another. I maintain you can work with me in one lesson, one session, and I'll improve you.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, did you have any maybe final thoughts that you wanted to
Sure.
leave
Yeah.
folks with?
It's that it really, as I said, there's a lot of cliches about public speaking and
Mm.
fear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, a lot of it is just hard work.
Mm.
If you're willing to do the work and do the preparation, like I was talking about,
Hmm.
you can create an environment for yourself where you feel confident. And then
Mm.
once you have your confidence, then you just draw on the work you've done preparing and presenting a concise, well articulated talk. And that goes for whether you're speaking in a meeting, or whether you're doing a webinar, whether you're giving a live presentation at a conference, or any kind of speaking situation. And like I always say, anytime you step out to deliver any kind of a talk or a commentary to some kind of an audience, you're a performer.
Mm.
And the space you're occupying, some people call it a speaking area, it's a stage. And the people you're talking to are an audience. And
Mm.
audiences expect performers on stages to put on shows. So you really have to draw on all these performance elements of public speaking, which I've
Mm.
explained in my first book, right? Yeah, you have to
Mhm.
make your delivery the priority. You have to show personality. You have to, if you feel fear, you feel the fear, but you keep on speaking. You put on a show. You show them why this means so much to you.
Mm.
That's how you get them to bond with you. You
Yeah.
give them a reason to care about what you're speaking
Mm.
about by including something material that really is relevant to their interests in the
Mhm.
moment. And finally, you keep things easy to follow. It's like driving down a
Mhm.
highway. You don't want to give them a misplaced road sign so they take a wrong turn and wind up in a lost. So,
Yeah.
but all that can be done, I believe, through a realistic grasp of your shortcomings, accepting what you need to do in order to feel better, and then following the method. You know, it's been said of me that I'm a great teacher of a method. And because I tend to have the ability to break down all sorts of processes into methods, right? Something you were doing, I would sort of break it down to a method so that you could duplicate it. And
Yeah.
and if you implement the steps and the teaching and the work, you'll get to your speaking goals, and you achieve whatever it is you're looking for, whether it's to be a thought leader, whether it's to be a better speaker in a meeting, whether it's simply to get by as a consultant talking to people, right? All of that happens for you, but it all starts from being willing to be honest about your shortcomings and doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And you don't have to fail over and over again to prepare. I guess you can.
No, we can shortcut it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can save you some torture.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about all this, Michael. Some really great tips here today that you've shared. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karl. It's been a pleasure here talking with you and sharing these ideas with you and your audience.
Great. I hope we can catch up again sometime.
Sure.
I have some events coming up, and I'd love to have you again as a guest at some point.
Sure. We'll be happy to do it.
Awesome. Great. All right. Thanks again. I'm gonna hit the button here.